Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes recap.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, coming to you this week with our recap of Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 5, The Door.
Which ended up being a lot more important to this episode than I initially thought. Like, I thought it was going to be like The Door at the House of Black and White, but we'll get to that part of the episode here in a little bit.
Yes. Man, no, this is a weird episode for me, Tony. I honestly feel like that this episode has some of the weakest moments this season, but it also has some of the strongest moments of this season.
Yeah, definitely.
And the strongest moments are at the end, so it really leaves that impression of this was the best. But we're gonna go through it point by point, starting with the Wall, and Sansa and Littlefinger meeting up in. What do you call it? Incognito. I was going to say incovalent, but that's not a real thing.
It's a secret rendezvous.
Yes, that's correct.
In some cabin somewhere.
In Moletown.
Yeah.
Which I think is... these two really interest me at this point in the show because Littlefinger is the scheming, conniving, he's working for everything he wants, but when it comes to Sansa, he's not exactly rational. He's not. When it comes to her, he's not completely willing to screw her over for his greater ambitions. At least that's how I read it. And yeah. She, despite the fact that he has put her in some really bad situations, I think she's not completely treating him with the cold rationality that she's learned from him either. They're sort of both emotionally compromised here, where she doesn't know exactly how much to trust him, and she says basically something I said at the time when she confronts him. She says, you sent me into Ramsay's house. If you knew what he was, you're my enemy. If you didn't know what he was, you're an idiot.
Yeah, and she basically lays out everything that he's done wrong to her over the next few minutes. She's basically like, you sent me you saved me from people who killed my family and sent me to people who killed my family.
Monsters. So
yeah.
You saved me from monsters who killed my family and sent me to monsters to kill my family. But I don't think... It's interesting that he's here right now. I didn't really think about it until...
It's a lot of travel.
Well, yes. That was another one of those we talked about last episode where, man, these people are getting places really fast that they probably wouldn't get there that fast in the books, but... okay, we'll handle that. But I think that at least part of the reason he's here is to make a bid for her hand, and not just for the sake of power. He's really, really into her. And it's an interesting side to him, and it might become his undoing.
It definitely could. It was almost his undoing in this. She could have had Brienne just cut him in half if she really wanted to.
Probably should have, to be honest.
Especially considering what he's done to her family in general, although she doesn't know all the details.
Well, and as we find out later, I think she thinks she can use him. I think that she gets this information about the army, and she's like, all right, I can do something with this. Which means she's playing the game more now than she ever has before.
Yeah, she's actually thinking a few moves ahead, whereas before she was just trying to survive.
Right, even to the point where later in the episode, she doesn't tell Jon everything that she knows. And I think that that's her, she's happy to be back with him. She trusts him 100%, but she's playing the game now. She's manipulating people. Maybe not manipulating might not be the right word, but she's anticipating moves ahead of time, and that's a Sansa we haven't seen before, but she's not quite 100% there yet, I don't think. She's not playing it on a level that Littlefinger is.
It's still nice to see her actually doing something on the show, to actually have some agency and to start pushing things forward. Because for so many seasons, she was just kind of there. It was some of the lesser enjoyable stuff. And now that she has basically is building an army to take back Winterfell, she's a lot more interesting. Well,
and the fact that she really rubs his nose in what he did to her because she knows that he cares. The part of the scene where she says, "What do you think they did to me?" And he's like, "I can't imagine." She says, "No, try to imagine." And that was so...
It was a lot more assertive than I expected.
Yeah, and it's great because there was a lot of backlash at the time for how they were taking this character, because she had been kind of on that path of, becoming more assertive in that season, and then they took her and they just threw her in Ramsay's, dungeon basically and let him have his way with her. And there's a lot of people.
She's not ready to play the game at that level yet.
Well, there was no game to play at that point for her. She was still, for a power level, she's still a pawn with them, and she got used. She got thrown under the bus, and it was nice to have her as a character kind of come up and say, hey, yeah, that wasn't cool, guys, and sort of be able to strike back. There's been a lot of that stuff where they've kind of taken the weakness of previous seasons and made it stronger in this season through retrospect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's almost a theme for like what goes on with the Ironborn later about like die and rise again stronger.
I don't know if Game of Thrones ever really died, although last season was a little bit lackluster. But we're not at the Ironborn yet. Next is Arya and the Faceless Men in the House of Black and White. She's once again getting her butt kicked by the blonde chick.
Stick fight.
Yeah, it's one of them has a stick in that fight. You really want to see her start succeeding, but she was blind and she was doing pretty well, and you're like, all right, she's getting there, and now we're kind of backing off of that just a little bit. Yeah, I want to see her progress more than this.
Well, she's back on assignment though, so there is at least some progression with that story.
Yeah, I just seeing her do a little bit of damage when she was blind and then getting her sight back and seeing that she's kind of leveled down again in the story. She wasn't, I thought that they were pacing things out to really give her something big to do this episode, and this episode is still kind of a lot more setup for her. Which
a little bit,
okay.
But it was also like I think it was more about her having the conflict between, is she actually going to lose herself? The girl that she's supposed to assassinate, or the woman, is in a play that's basically portraying her family history, showing her dad as a doofus, showing the deaths of everyone she knows, and like what's happened with Sansa. I don't even know if she actually knew that Sansa was married off to Tyrion, and all the things that happened there.
She might have heard about it at some point, because she was around people who were in... But I can't remember exactly how that went. She couldn't have known what kind of person Tyrion would be, though, and what kind of... we know that he treated Sansa pretty well, but this is the only information she has, and knowing that he is a Lannister and, probably having some sort of knee-jerk reaction to him being a dwarf, I would assume she probably doesn't have kind inclinations to him before this is not going to help anything. If she and Tyrion meet up, she's going to be perfectly happy bumping him off or something. I don't think that's going to happen, but that could lead to some real conflict, because that's the only information she has right now, is this sort of weird propaganda thing.
Yeah. That was kind of an odd and entertaining scene that lasted a very, very long time. Like, just the play.
It was interesting to get that recap, and to see it through her eyes, but it could have... This episode had a few pacing problems and some things that didn't go long enough, and this one went maybe a little bit too long. And I didn't get... They introduced us to all these people and, their various genitalia in the next part of the scene, and I didn't understand... Are these people going to be a big part of the next episode? Are we meant to really empathize with them? I didn't understand what the conflict is here for her. She's just saying, this is a nice person, I don't want to kill her.
Yeah. Whereas before, like, the person that she was supposed to kill was an unfair person, and like the reason for this entire poisoning is just showing that like the faceless god comes for good and bad people. I don't really understand if that's a lesson that needs to be drilled home, if it's going to be like pushing her away from... Like, I'm just wondering if she actually still wants to be part of this.
Well, I don't fully understand how the Faceless Men, like, what is their deal? Are they hired? Did someone... That was what she implied, right? Who wants this person dead?
Yeah, they've already paid for it. Like, I think he said, like, 3 in kind or something. Like, they already paid for it a while ago. There was a line that I didn't fully catch. But he said that they had already paid for it, so it must be done.
Okay.
I don't know if that's like literally someone came by and dropped off some gold pieces, or if someone like did some sort of like ritualistic thing. I have no idea.
Well, the interesting thing about this scene is that he gives a really short history of the Faceless Men, which we didn't have in the show before.
It's
They were
also
just
one of the
kind of
coolest looking scenes, like in there, them just walking through the halls with all the faces.
right, right, and that this is something that was in the book, and a longer explanation for where the Faceless Men came from, of this, this guy who was a slave, and brought. This guy kind of, I don't know if they're just changing it for the show or if they're sugarcoating it for Arya, but the way he tells it is, oh yeah, they killed off all the masters, and then threw off their chains and came here and founded the city. But the way it is in the books is he not only killed off people who might have been evil, but also did mercy killings of people who were in misery or sickness or whatever.
So he was just like culling the elderly, the sick, all that.
Right. It was there wasn't like we kill the bad people. It was like, it was more like, hey, death comes to everybody, and sometimes it's a mercy to die. And so whoever it is that started this no man, whoever that was, he dispensed that mercy to, all men equally. And that's part of this history that doesn't get brought up in the episode. And I don't know if it's changed in the show or if they just... It may not even matter, to be honest. But I thought...
They might reintroduce it later. Who knows? But like it's a detail that might just stay there.
But it is interesting to see her having this conflict of, I don't know if I really want to kill people just to kill people. Are these good people? Are they bad people? And she thinks she understands the situation. There's an entirely possible that she does not. She might just be wrong about who's hiring who and what their motivations are. She sees, 5 seconds, and one thing that I was kind of annoyed by. She's like the most obvious spy ever, just staring at everybody as they're talking. Like, come on, woman.
Yeah, she's in the middle of the room, surrounded by the people. She's not like in a closet watching. She's not doing anything. They like are throwing clothes at her and everything.
Well, I understand that she's undercover there. I think she has a reason to be there, but like she's very obviously listening to what they're saying, to the point where if I was talking, I wouldn't be talking around her. I'd be like, "Go away, woman!" Or it just. So that's
misogynistic, Al.
I didn't call her a girl.
Just get out of here. I don't want you poisoning my rum.
But it was neat that we talked about this last episode. They had the, Daenerys, the actress, what's her face? Emilia Clarke had said, hey, listen, I'm showing boobs, you're showing dong. And they paid that off this episode.
Yeah,
I got a prediction right.
It's like, there's lumps on my cock. Thanks. I really wanted to know that about the Joffrey imitator.
Do you think do you think that Game of Thrones has a sexism problem?
No, I don't care.
I mean, well, I know that you don't care, Tony. I don't care. That's not the question. The question is it there? They show a penis, and they show it in the least possible sexually titillating way possible, and then have people, the person who owns the penis, make comments about how gross it is.
Oh,
they don't treat boobs like that ever.
Yeah, and as well they shouldn't, because dicks are gross.
Okay, as long as we're on the same page that we're okay with that.
Yes.
I just wanted to point that out. Is there anything else we need to say about that scene? I think that scene didn't go very far.
Yeah.
And speaking of scenes that don't go very far, we also get a little bit of a short clip where Bran basically sees the origin of the White Walkers.
Yeah, where they like the children basically walk up, slide what looks like a piece of obsidian into a man tied to one of the old god trees, and he becomes the first White Walker, probably the Night King.
Yeah, that's what he looked like. And I thought it was interesting that these things are essentially their nuclear option. They're almost worse than a nuclear option. They're setting loose a thing that they cannot fully control, because the existential threat of man coming into the world is so great that they have to release this on the world. And that is interesting to me.
Yeah, it's like I had no suspicions that was how the White Walkers came about at all.
So, and it's a weird sort of thing, because up until now in the books, and they haven't really been much explained in the show, but the Children of the Forest seemed like these kind of benevolent nature spirit kinds of things. And the fact that they create this world-ending force to combat another world-ending force, that's a weird sort of... It's an odd meeting of two
well, at the
different
time,
threats.
I don't think they were thinking it was like mutually assured destruction. They were just looking for some way to fight it off. Because there's only so many like throwing stones that they can have against like hordes of men. I don't think they intended to end the world.
Well, but the world was going to end for them if they didn't do this. What I'm saying is they had... I think that they made this knowing what the result could be, but also knowing that, you know, if the balance was created, that it would be better for them, that they would have at least a chance of surviving. I don't know. It's definitely doesn't put them in a 100% positive light, but it's another one of those things in Game of Thrones where you think, okay, I understand where they're coming from, but it might not have been the best decision.
Yeah,
they're just other people essentially. When you get right down to it, they're playing the game on a different level, but still
they might
the
be
game.
immortal, but they can still have lapses of wisdom.
Yes, are they immortal though, or do they just?
They said that they were around
really
since
long
before
time?
the first men, and that they'd be around long after. Well, that prediction was a little bit gone, but
Some of them are still around, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't
I don't
all
think
of
that's
them
the
under
whole
that one
population.
tree.
Yeah, probably not. But
I don't think that's how that worked, but I guess we'll find out. But that was a short scene, kind of just gives us a little taste of where those guys came from. Next up, we get the King's Moot, where the Ironborn are voting to find who is going to be the next king. It's just interesting that we have it like something resembling a democracy in this world.
Yeah,
Where
and
everything
like
else is lines of succession.
the idea of a moot has been around for a long time, so that's not new. It almost makes more sense that the Ironborn would have it, just because it doesn't have to be a bloodline system. Whenever you have a moot, it can be whoever's earned it the most, or whoever's willing to take it. And that's kind of what we're looking at here, because you've got Yara stating her case, and in kind of a touching moment, you actually have Theon coming in and giving her his backing, which is a little bit harder. Like, it's easy for him to say he wants to be with her, or he wants to help lead with her and everything in private, but to go out there in front of everybody after he's been shamed and to fully promote her and try to get her that queenship, it was a good scene.
Yeah, the way they shot that, it was they built up a lot of tension there, where you're thinking, okay, is he gonna? He said he was gonna, right? He's gonna put his backing behind her, right?
Yeah, I thought he was, for a second I thought he was going to be like, I am the rightful blah blah blah.
Because that's the Theon that we know. That's the Theon that had been around for, he was angling for that kind of power, and he's been stripped down so much, and then to have Euron come along and not only take the wind out of their sails, it's just fun. Not only take the wind out of their sails with the election and say, hey, you guys should vote for me, but also just totally like bring up, hey, you got your cock cut off.
Like 3 times.
Several
too.
times. This is one of those things I might have been spoiled by with the books, but this whole Kingsmoot thing goes on for a while in the books, and in the show it kind of feels, well, you tell me, did it feel rushed to you? Did it feel like that could have been a storyline that stretched out for a little longer?
It felt like it could, but I didn't care that it was over in one long scene. Like, I would rather see it get the action started than have it go for multiple episodes. We ended up seeing Euron walk in there. He admits that he threw his brother off of a bridge. Nobody seems to care because people didn't really like Balon all that much. And he states his case, and he makes it clear that he wants to have Daenerys Targaryen bring her army over and give them everything they've ever wanted to make them actually like a real nation again. The thing is, they have similar goals, like as far as Yara and Euron. They both want like the Iron Islands to actually be respected again, to actually be something real. It's just he's a little bit ahead of the game in being that he's male, and he knows more of what's going on the other continent and how to bring an army with him.
Well, and the fact that he's male also means that he can say, hey, I can marry Daenerys Targaryen, which is something that still, she has not married. Or did she marry the one Weasel guy in the previous season? I've lost track.
I know that she was intending to. I don't know if the marriage ever took place, but he's dead, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. But, Euron says, hey, listen, we've got the ships, she's got the army. If I marry her, we cement our position in the world. And I don't see Daenerys going for that, but we'll have to wait and see. We get to see how they induct people into kingship, which is something that was in the book as just sort of a general... it was more like baptism in the book. I mean, it was like this, but it wasn't just for anointing the king. Like the first time we meet the priest guy, who's also a Greyjoy, I believe, in the book anyway. The first time we meet him, he's drowning people and bringing them back to life, just like on the shore as part of their religious rites. But it was neat to see that as part of this, where they do a hardcore baptism.
Yeah, like literally, like hold you underwater until you breathe in the water, and you're pretty much just dead. And you're right, that is Greyjoy. His name's Aeron Greyjoy. He's played by Michael Feast.
It's so nice to have Aeron and Euron. Good job. Keep coming up with different names there, guys. And Balon. It's Balon, right? Yeah. Couldn't be one of them be Bob or something? But and intercut with that scene, we have the other Greyjoys that lost to making the smart decision and getting out of Dodge with the best ships that they can commandeer, which I'm glad we didn't see, but it does make me wonder, like, what did they say to the ships to get them to leave? Because if they can just talk to all the commanders of the best ships and be like, hey, let's go and run away, then wouldn't they have been able to muster enough support to win the Kingsmoot anyway?
Oh, I think that they were following Yara because she was like the Revenant. She was the warrior leading the entire armada before. It's more like general support. They probably left a lot of the captains back at the Moot and promoted a lot of first mates up, people who were loyal to Yara.
Again, I don't know that I needed to see that, but when that book finally comes out, and if that does happen in the book, I'll be interested to get a little bit more of the details there, because I don't fully comprehend that. And of course, Euron is like, we'll build more ships. I know that's probably not an empty boast, but there's a part of me that thinks, what is your economy based on? What are you guys eating? You're going to put everybody to work building ships and sewing sails?
Yeah, they're not exact. Like, I would have thought it'd be like, grab what ships remain. We're going hunting for new ships or something like that, considering they pay the iron price for everything. They don't sew anything. They probably don't build their ships that often either.
I don't know, but I mean, apparently they're going to build 1,000 ships and go after these guys, and that'll probably be next episode, the way Game of Thrones moves. I mean, I apparently you can just throw some ships together and it's all good. Again, this episode to me was a little uneven, and speaking of uneven stuff, this next scene is maybe, in my opinion, the worst scene in the episode. Not that it's terrible, where Jorah and Daenerys have their meeting, and Daenerys is basically like, hey, go find a cure, man. Good for you.
I want you back, but just take your leprosy elsewhere.
It's so weird. It's such a, like...
It didn't even look like it looked like there was something wrong with her in that scene. Like, it was just something that they came up with in post, and they're like, all right, everybody get back here. We're going to throw a wig on her. You're going to stand there. You're going to put on the makeup, and we're just going to do this as fast as possible and get out.
I could see that. I mean, they're off. They have some establishing shots of, like, the camp, but they're just off in some desert somewhere, standing by themselves.
Dahario's just not... I don't think he has a line there. He's just like, okay, I'm going to stare at both of them.
It just looks back and forth. I understand why you have to do that, because you don't want Daenerys to be the woman who's like, well... oh, thanks for coming to get me. See you later. You don't want Jorah to just hang around knowing that he's going to turn into a scaly man. So you gotta give some kind of thing. But he says, I'm going to go off and die. I know I'm gonna die. I don't know of any cure, and I know that you turn into some kind of weird, half crazed sort of zombie person anyway. I guess is this essentially, and I'll kill myself before that happens. I was happy to save you. I love you. He says I love you to her, which I think he said before, but that was one moment that I was like, yeah, that's great. This scene, and then she says, no, I forbid you to die. You go off and say, but it just.
I think she was more saying, I forbid you to just go off and kill yourself because you have this thing. Just try to do something about it.
She has all of these. If there's a cure, do you think maybe it would help if she went to some of these wise women who were there at the Dothraki meeting place and be like, hey, have you guys heard anything about this grayscale thing? Is there anything we can do to fix it? And somebody be like, I've heard once, way off in the north that they have this or whatever. Something. Just don't be like, all right, Jorah, you go off and do your thing. We're going to be dragons and stuff.
Are you really promoting the Dothraki health system?
What?
They would just straight up cut it off.
Listen, that would be better than nothing.
I mean, it is his left arm. He'd still be able to swing a sword.
That scene kind of irked me. I didn't hate it, but it was not strong at all.
Let's move on to the next slightly stronger scene.
Slightly. We move on to Meereen, where Tyrion and Eunuch Boy
Varys,
right, are discussing their options. They don't have Daenerys, and so they need someone to kind of rally the people together in her name. And they've contacted the priestess of the Lord of Light. She's named as the first priestess, by the way, which makes me wonder, how long ago did she become priestess? Or is that just a title that she has?
It might be first priestess of that continent. It might be a lot of things, but it seemed like she was almost a little bit suspect of Melisandre anyway. But this priestess is named Kinvara. She's played by Anita Bergstein. And basically she comes in and is kind of taking like a verbal ass-chewing from Varys, who's just being kind of a smarmy smartass, and she kind of stings back.
Yeah, well, sting is maybe not the right word, because she's not rude to him or anything. She just says, hey, you got some doubts? Well, here's some proof. I know what you went through. I know things that I couldn't possibly know about the day that you became a eunuch, and, something spoke to you out of the fire. What did it say? I know what it said, and I know who said it, and he just, it has all the air taken out of him.
Yeah. I wish that they would have said it, because I was really curious. It might be something that never gets resolved. Who knows? It might have been something with the Lord of Light, which is kind of hinted at. I have no idea.
I really love the framing of this scene, because they made sure they showed those flaming chandeliers in the background all the time, and that is the Lord of Light's theme, right?
Yeah.
That's his deal. He's about fire, and even though we've been in that throne room a lot, they don't usually emphasize that, but when she's there, they're like, oh, hey, guys, remember this? We got fire. The fire's here because of the Lord of Light. I do question a little bit, though, what exactly I kind of understand what their strategy is with, okay, she's gonna help them out, but
in the first episode of the season, they show people talking about the Lord of Light in the cities, and it's kind of this new rising religion amongst the lower people in Meereen. So I think they're looking for a way to prop up Daenerys among the local people as a hero, as this saving champion, and it only makes sense that if you're gonna have a god based around fire and purging and cleansing the non-believers and everything, that she would have 3 dragons that can burn fire, and she herself cannot be burned.
That does make a lot of sense, and I guess it makes a sense in the sort of, politicians stopping at, big churches and...
Yeah, you're always looking for that endorsement for the big preachers, or at least a lot of people are.
So, I guess I can see that. It didn't... Because it's in the Game of Thrones universe, and because Tyrion and Varys both seem like very non-religious type people, it's interesting that that's where they went to. I would have liked, again, a little bit more of the explanation there, but it's not a bad scene. It's interesting, for the moments between her and Varys. But I'm interested to see where that goes and how it plays out.
It definitely will be interesting. Is there anything else with that scene?
I don't think so. Next up is Bran getting touched by the Night King, which, man, what a moment for bad stuff to happen, right? This is just pure bad luck on his part, where
he's just bored in a cave and wants to like go out and check out some of the visions that the Three-Eyed Raven's been giving him. He can't control them yet because he's not that well versed in it. He touches the roots, and he's in front of a gruesome army of the Night King.
And the moment that first of all, he warps in, whatever, you know what I'm saying. He's in the dream there. You see the broken tree there with the, now it's winter. Now they have the same spiral pattern of stones. So you have all that together. And then he turns around and sees the army. And I knew the second he started walking towards them, I was like, somebody's going to see him. They're going to turn. There's going to be a moment where they all look at him and turn around, and it's going to be freaky. But I didn't see the touching come in where the guy grabs his arm.
Yeah, and just it kind of breaks the magic over the cave that they're in, because whenever they first introduce the cave, you see all these skeletons try to run in, they hit a barrier, and they just shatter.
Yeah, and it's because... So we've seen him a little bit before maybe not affect, but sort of have a ripple in the timeline where he's able to go back and see things that happened, and he calls out to his father, and his father hears him for a moment and then moves on. And here we're setting up what's going to happen at the end, but they're establishing these rules and how much is possible through this time portal jump thing. I don't know exactly how to explain it other than he's going back in time, and they're really foreshadowing that scene, not only by giving the White Walkers an in to the cave, but also saying, hey, there's a really strong connection here. It's not just some wispy thing. Bran can really do a lot, which sets up that final scene really well, I thought.
Yeah, and we'll get to that here in a moment.
Before we get to that, though, we go back to the wall. Sansa and Brienne talk about sort of what their plans are. Did she send Brienne off to talk to the people at River Run, or was that...
That's what it sounded like. She was going to talk to Blackfish, who is her uncle, who's rallied the armies of the Vale to come and assist with the taking of Winterfell.
I just didn't see Brienne ride off at any point. I saw Sansa and Robb and all them ride off, which there was a great moment there where... I forget what the guy's name is, but whoever
Tormund.
John's friend, Tormund, he says, Captain of Lord of the Night's Watch, should we close the doors? He's like, I'm not the Lord of the Night's Watch.
Oh, no, that's not Tormund. Tormund's the redhead that was giving the eyes to Brienne.
Yes. Well, that's a great moment, too. But when whatever his name is, he says, he realizes that Jon is actually gone and now he's in charge, and he's just like, oh, crap. Shut the door, yeah. Okay.
I actually can't even remember that guy's name, but he's in charge of probably the weakest the Night's Watch has been in centuries. I can't imagine them getting much weaker than they are right now. That was kind of a sorry Castle Black.
A great moment of foreshadowing where Jon says to him, hey, don't knock the wall down while I'm gone. I'm just going to throw out there, as I mentioned in an earlier episode, that horn that can knock the wall down is still out there somewhere. And
someone actually commented on our video saying that they picked it up whenever they found the shards of obsidian and they didn't know what it was. So it's technically in their hands already.
If that's the same horn, I hope nobody decides to take up bugle lessons.
Yeah.
We need a little music around here, guys. I assume they wouldn't throw that away that easily, but
it would be kind of funny though.
Just imagining that horn just sitting around, like somebody like, what does this do? Oh my gosh! I didn't just put it. They put it back as the wall's crumbling around them. I didn't. Guys,
yeah, just get on a horse. And
the wall fell down.
Hopefully it doesn't fall on top of you. You're up on the wall doing your patrol, and you just bugle out a little bit. Falls 700 feet.
So they're set up there for things that are going to happen, and we have a little bit of strategy session as well, where they're talking about who will be loyal to who, giving us a better idea of the structure of the North. So we know from previous episodes that Ramsay has the support of several of the families, but they go through, hey, there are other people in the North or other houses that have supported the Starks. And Sansa says, hey, even the people who have thrown in with Ramsay, some of them will still support us if we're a viable option. So it'll be interesting to see that. And obviously Littlefinger's still in play as a piece. But that's going
she
forward.
She lies to protect who Littlefinger is, or how she got certain information about the Tullys. And it's kind of an interest, like that's whenever she's playing the game again.
Right, because she knows that Jon would not take it. Jon would just be like, no, we're not. What, Littlefinger's involved over there? No. I don't think he would accept any help from him at all.
Yeah, the kind
and Sansa
words
knows
of
that.
Peter Baelish. Especially after he basically sold Sansa to Ramsay.
But we get a great send-off to this episode, despite the fact that I felt like it was somewhat uneven. We get the White Walkers attacking Bran's tree, and it's sort of a moment where everything is just falling apart. You have the army shows up. Bran won't. He's in the middle of not warging, but going into the past, and they're trying to like get him out of it, and they're coming in. The children of the forest are throwing their giant magic hand grenades, and it's and to see those hordes crawling in through like on the top of the tunnel and around that whole sort of
they're trying to like pry their way through. A lot of people have talked about like CGI effects for in the show, but I've always loved what they've done with skeletons and the White Walkers. Like the main White Walkers, the Kings or like the Riders or whatever, you could tell those are a little bit CGI, but some of the zombified effects are just perfect.
Even the Kings, I think, are probably practical, and then with, they make their eyes blue. And
they look great. I'm just saying there's a little bit of that like CGI veneer on them.
But yes, and it just builds up, and you're like, gosh, get out of there, guys! It got to the point where I thought, legitimately, how is anybody going to survive this at all?
Yeah, especially because Bran is just like full on in the trance as the, I think the director, the creators of the show said he was basically trying as quickly as he could to upload everything that Bran could need before he was taken.
Yes, I saw that after the show thing as well, which did not come through exactly, but it was interesting that he could do that. The three-eyed raven is sending information to him through their link, and at the same time Bran wakes up a little bit, just enough, like he's still stuck in that dream world, but he wakes up enough to warg into Hodor, who is freaking out, not doing anything, and finally get him to move and to carry him away. And Mira, I think, is running with them, and the things are closing in, and the last of the children blows up, and then you have that moment where she yells, and you hear her say, "Hold the door," and it echoes into the dream, into the past. And Hodor, in the past, whose name I forget.
Willis.
Willis, thank you.
He stares in, and he actually sees Bran for just a moment in the vision.
Oh, does he? I didn't realize that.
The moment he made eye contact with Bran, his eyes were kind of panning, and then he saw him, and that's whenever he went warg and kind of had that seizure, where he started screaming, "Hold the door, hold the door, hold the door," and you start understanding where, after about the third time, I was like, that's what Hodor means. That's the entire reason for his name, and you just see him I just started losing it a little bit. I was freaking out, and you see them running through the tunnels, and Hodor's he's dragging them through. He's getting them out of there, and one of the children stops with the grenade, blows up, pretty much sacrifices herself, just trying to take out as many of the White Walkers as possible. And they get to this door, and he busts his way through and just holds it while they slowly escape into the night.
And listen, it's such a, how do I put this? You could just have Hodor die, and that would be a sad ending, right? Everybody be bummed because Hodor's awesome and, basically innocent, and he could just sacrifice himself to save them. But having them do it this way, having them reveal this thing that we've known about him for the entire series, for 6 whole seasons of this show, 6 years,
55 episodes.
Right, and he hasn't been in all of them, admittedly, but we established this guy as saying these words, and to pay that off and to say that meant something all the way back there. And they talked about in that a post-episode thing that this was something from George R.R. Martin.
Yeah,
they
this
didn't
was
make it up.
one of his first reveals for what's happening in like the new book that he let slip. And they were talking about how hard that hit them just sitting in a hotel room.
So you have that reveal, and layered into that piece of storytelling is how powerful Bran actually is in this world. Because now he can influence the past. He can do stuff to people in the past of this universe. To the point where somebody was talking about Dagnabbit, the Mad King, talking about how the Mad King had voices in his head, talking about how the Mad King was talking about burning them all right before he died, and hypothesizing maybe he wasn't crazy. Maybe Bran got into his head and was trying to tell him about the White Walkers, saying, "Hey, these guys are coming. You got to burn them. You got to burn them all," and like didn't know what he was doing and set him off in a way that people like he wasn't expecting.
That would be pretty fascinating if it actually went that far, that Bran is kind of the accidental cause of like the entire Mad King. I thought that they kind of hinted that he was getting poisoned slowly at the same time, so like maybe he didn't know that and he was the one putting like the extra visions in his head that made everybody just scared of the Mad King.
Well, and he was having all that the fire built, the green fire or whatever it was called, that they ended up using in the end of season 2. Jamie talks about how he had all of that built, and he says that he was gonna, burn the whole city. And maybe that's true, but maybe the Mad King wasn't quite as mad as we thought, and he actually was preparing for that, that invasion way before he really needed to.
Very well could be. I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it. I was too focused on how, like, just the Hodor thing went down.
I mean, that was sad. Although I didn't cry. A lot of people.
I teared up a tiny bit. It wasn't like sobbing or anything. It was just like I'm a sucker for self-sacrifice, though. So seeing him just hold the doors, everything's breaking through. Like I don't know how long he lasted, but you know that guy is holding the door as long as he's like still like drawing any breath. And man, it was just crazy scene.
You think we're gonna see him as a White Walker?
I don't know. He might get too torn up for that.
Maybe. I mean,
he'd be a rather large White Walker, too.
Yeah, if they have to fight him after death. And some people were also pointing out that Bran kind of, like, got Hodor into this mess, and now he really got Hodor into this mess. Like, Bran just screwed up everything about Hodor's life. Yeah,
Hodor's destiny was entirely based around Bran.
And not, like, in a fun way. It's just... you can't really blame Bran. It's not his fault, but... It just kind of sucks for Hodor that it went down that way.
Yeah. We also, we kind of skipped it, but we saw one of the White Walkers take out the Three-Eyed Raven. They killed him while he was still in that, and Max von Sydow is off the show now, or Sydow.
And to also something we missed, Mira takes out one of the kings.
Yeah, like she throws an obsidian spear and takes him out.
Yeah, I thought that I was a little bit surprised at how good she was at fighting them. I thought that...
Well, she's definitely a survivor. She's been out on her own for so long. So, like, if you were going to raise an army of people that don't have any sort of experience, one of the easiest things you can do is raise spearmen, because it's basically just point and stab, point and throw. So, like, for her to be adequate at that when she's already proven herself to be a hunter kind of makes sense. Especially in a situation like that.
That guy wasn't the first one that she killed either. She had killed several of the zombified White Walkers already, and then like the White comes in, and she hits him with the obsidian spear. So she's, basically, other than the Children of the Forest, she's the only person who's fighting in that scene and doing a really good job.
Because I don't think Hodor actually attacks anybody. I think he's just trying to get them out. And once again, we see another direwolf die.
Yeah.
I was pissed because I just wanted to have a point. Like, it didn't slow them down that much. Like, it just seems like the direwolves are being killed off willy-nilly right now.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It did seem like what would... It's one of those situations where that's what that character, quote-unquote, would have done, right? The wolf is going to protect him, as much as it can, and that's not going to kill the zombies.
It might have also been running after them. Or running with them.
I got the impression that it was jumping into the zombies, like fighting them off as best it could as a giant wolf, and that's not really that good.
Yeah. It's like a giant wolf will work against a lot of things, but not people that literally don't have innards to tear out or bleed out or anything like that.
So I think we're down to 2 now, right? We have Arya's wolf, who has just been off the show since
just MIA.
Essentially season 1, and Jon Snow's ghost. And I have a feeling that they'll both end up dying before the end, but it'll be...
Yeah, Ghost will be a bigger one, and who knows what'll happen with, I think it's Nymeria, something like that.
Yes. I heard some really interesting fan speculation as I was researching stuff about this show and about this episode about Mira and who she might be.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I will throw this out with a spoilers by way of speculation thing.
It's the same thing with... Joffrey's head on the mountain, This is our speculation corner, the last 5 minutes.
It could be true, it could not be true. But according to the sort of lore of the show, her and Jon Snow were born the same year. And there's a fan theory going around that Jon Snow is not an only child, that What's-Her-Face gave birth to twins. And that Mira is another, is the other Targaryen sort of born... twin sister of Jon Snow.
She almost seems too young for that, but then again,
she has the same haircut.
Yeah, that's true. They've accelerated Jon Snow's age a little bit too, because he looks like he's about 30, even though he's supposed to be 17, 18, 20, somewhere in that range.
I don't know if he looks like he's 30. I did really love the comment from Brienne when she talks about how he's so brooding. Just I don't know if you call that fan service, but one of those moments where they're just looking at the audience being like, yeah, we know, guys. Just like the part where in this Tower of Joy sequence where we're almost about to find out about, what's going to happen there. And then he says, well, that's enough for today. Anyway. I think that'll do it for this episode, Tony.
I think so. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. If you're listening on the normal podcast page, throw us a like on iTunes, or not really a review. Or just head over to humanechoes.com. There's a lot of cool stuff there. There's also a great way to become a member. If you click the link there for $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, there's a lot of cool stuff that we give you. But the $2 a month gets you access to the bonus podcast, which it's a lot less structured than these, but it's a ton of fun. So go ahead and give that a look.
And we'll see you guys next week with another recap of Game of Thrones.
Bye.